Welcome to the lesson. I have some materials on hand. I have some Speedball Super Black India ink, some water, recycled lid, some soft brushes, and a piece of hot or cold press watercolor paper. So nice shake on that India ink, put a little bit in the lid, and then get that nice fluffy brush with some fresh water and go ahead and just put some water down on the paper. So your background can look however you want. I'm just keeping it simple with India ink and watercolor. And this is for the last project that I make at the very end of this video. So water, 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 nice and saturated. And then I get to play with the India ink and another brush, not quite as fluffy, and just let it happen, right? So when this dries, it's got some fun texture. The edges are a little rough. Some of the paper comes through here and there. And you can have fun with this. You can use all kinds of things, gouache, acrylic inks, fluid acrylics, and just kind of play with something. So now I have this Shakti coloring book. This is the artist that I talked about during our call with Whitney. This Shakti fire that surrounds these deities is what I'm referencing. I just have it on hand just to look at for later for when I'm sketching my symbol. So I have a black piece of paper. I have a piece of craft paper. I have a Georgia O'Keeffe print. I have an old calendar thing. I've got some of my vintage pastels. I also have my Mag Healy running the creative program for the atmosphere. And now I'm going to get to sketching. So I've got some more India ink out on hand, some smaller brushes, some fresh water, some pastels, some Conti crayon and graphite sticks. And I am just going to play with a variety of flames. So playing with a variety of materials, a variety of styles, and just playing with the idea of sacred flame, Shakti fire, and just kind of get some sketches down on some craft paper and see kind of where my creative flow takes me and see what kind of materials I'm attracted to that I could utilize in a final piece. And so I've got a Conti crayon here, and this is kind of my go-to flame. It's very thin and like kind of fingery. And then I play with the idea of the candle, right? The Shakti fire and the devotion and ritual of lighting a candle. And so it can be really literal and more rendered. I tend to be more illustrative nowadays. I spent a lot of hours at the easel, and so I just like to be more playful now. You could also do just sort of a motif that is inspired by a flame, like something like this. You know, just have fun with materials. That's India ink. More literal, like a campfire. So just see, you know, like that Ram Dass talk, sit around the fire, right? Here's a liner brush that I'm using. Yeah, like if you're playing with inks or paints, using a variety of brushes to see what each brush can do is really fun. And, you know, you just get a chance to play with materials and not have it be a big deal, right? Not have it be this final piece. Like take your time, especially if you don't have a lot of time put in with materials. Just take some time to play and explore styles and different materials. Yeah, and I have a teacher, mentor, friend who always encourages me to be a little bit more wabi-sabi, right? A little bit more messy. I have a tendency to want to be really, really clean and illustrative, and it's sometimes fun to be more painterly and messy and, invite the texture. So now I am referencing one of those Shakti drawings from that coloring book with some pastels. So I'm looking at the paper, or I'm looking at the picture, and I'm attempting to emulate the style of this artist and how he does the flames. And so I am inspired. I mimic his style. And then I kind of make like a crown type of image. So I set the book aside and I just kind of allow myself to just play with that idea. And so like I said, this is just the sketch phase. And so just allowing myself to play. And then I'm like, oh, it is a crown. I'm going to draw a little face and just have fun with it. And, kind of get the proportions more or less. I mean, it's just real loose. And then I'll go in with a piece of vine charcoal just to kind of get a little bit more detail in. And then I'll be done with the sketches. And then I have this page on hand to reference, and I've got all those other pieces of paper and things collected. And so then now I just get to play. And so I have all my materials around me so that I can start on some more, just focused pieces. So this is a digital illustration that I made that was this calendar that I had created a couple years ago. And I just used that and I decided to make a big flame sort of in that style that I found in the coloring book with some pastels. And now I have some pink craft acrylic paint. It's just those, like $2 craft paints, and going really bold and using a nice round brush. I like a sable hair round brush to fill in the shape with some pink. And like I said, I like being more kind of illustrative and, if you want to get really painterly with yours or, just have it be in your own style, your own technique, your favorite materials. It can look totally different than this. I'm just giving you some examples of how to play and just explore. And just having fun with some bold colors. Now I have a smaller round brush and I'm coming in to those areas that were a little too tiny to use that bigger brush with to fill it in. So inviting those spaces where you just kind of focus on one symbol. Explore how you feel when you're using the symbol, what comes through, inviting some coherence with the mind and the body and the spirit working together as one. And then it just starts to talk to you, right? Like considering the composition, this bottom left corner was a little bit empty. And so I decided to add just like a little blossom something. And then I decided to go back in with the darker reddish pink pastel and outline some of these little flickers that I added. Just fun little exercises, right? To get in the flow. So I have this Georgia O'Keeffe giant print book that I had found at a thrift store. And you can sketch out what you're going to do beforehand. Of course, I've been making art for a really long time. And so I just kind of allow for the confidence to kind of go at it without any sketching. So I have this really nice golden brand light gold fluid acrylic that I'm using now. And I'm really just allowing those it's kind of more my style of a flame now with this beautiful, bold red background of this master artist, Georgia O'Keeffe. And I'm just, collaborating with this artist who, has given us so many beautiful images, and just kind of vibing with her energy and my sacred flames. And so I'm really allowing it to be organic and playful. I love how really flames can look however you want because they're just so wild. And so then now that I have the lines down, now I'm coming in and thickening some of the, kind of bottom curvy parts of these flames, still leaving the flames at the top or like at the edges to stay thin so that there's a nice range of line thickness. I think that that's more fun to look at. So just kind of bumping that up. And of course, it's hard to tell because it's kind of like a glossy print and then a metallic painting, but it's quite luscious, this golden fluid acrylic. I highly recommend it. And you can water it down and things too if you have like a watercolor paper, or you can use it sort of more opaque and thick. So it's fun. And DF is my signature. It stands for Divine Femme. That's kind of my art name. And so it's in most of the work that I make. Now I have a smaller brush that I'm going in to just kind of build up the tips of my flames. And now I have a liner brush to go even further in with the thin tips of my flames. And also just allowing for a little bit of that wabi-sabi, right? That messiness and just allowance for the organic, playful nature of the material and my hand. I'm a human being. And I think it's so much fun to invite that imperfection. There's so much beauty there. So yeah, that's another study of the Shakti fire. And just a fun play with a beautiful master. All right, so I have a little piece of black paper. There's that iridescent golden that I used in the last piece. I also was showing you some gold gouache. Gouache is also a really nice material to use. And so that's an option as well. And then I have this sticker that is an illustration that I created that I'm referencing. So of course you can have a bunch of sketches beforehand of compositions that you would like to emulate with certain materials. This is going to be another more illustrative piece. So I'm using a liner brush. I actually prefer painting lines and drawing lines, but if you would prefer to use like paint pens or markers or graphite or charcoal to draw lines, that's also a great option. And maybe you have a sketch that is totally different that you're exploring now. But this piece is really to bring together some different ideas and have the fire or the flame be part of the whole, but not, the main event. And so I love these goddess, like feminine figures. It's kind of, just something that I do a lot. It's part of my personal sort of sigil imagery that I've been using for many, many years. And so I am just referencing that, making sort of a new version. So as you can see, this paper is, just some inexpensive, thin cardstock. So it's not giving me the real good zhuzh of what this material can do. But that fluid acrylic by Golden has that opportunity to really come in, and become a wash, and you can play with transparency and opacity and just play with it. So now I'm just kind of playing. I'm totally winging it. I'll be honest. I just feel for this project, I wanted to be able to be in that flow, right? Be in the flow of the divine creative force that resides all around us at all times and is, the essence of all creation. And so just letting my intuition take me for a ride, not having any expectations, and inviting my wheelhouse of symbology and mark making to create something on the spot for you. And of course, I've been making art for, I think, almost 25 years. And so, don't expect yourself to just whip something out, out of nowhere. I highly recommend sketching. I'm sure that this piece would have been a lot better if I had sketched it out and then done another piece. But this is just a playful exploration for you all. So I've got that liner brush still, and I'm thickening up the edges of the lines. I'm going to go on this other side, and as you can see, it is mostly symmetrical with some slight asymmetrical things happening, right? So it's not perfectly even on each side, but it does feel like a symmetrical composition. And so I'm just kind of playing with the space and seeing where it needs to have some additions so that it can find balance and feel like the eye is moving throughout, right? I'm all about implementing the elements and principles of design. As a former college art instructor, that was my job, to make sure that people understood how to create a confident and coherent composition. So as you can see now, I'm making some little elements here and there to bring a little bit more interest to the piece and move the eye around. And I've got my little root symbol, a pomegranate, infinity. And because the summit started on 11/11, I wanted to just add some 11/11s in there and just play with it. So yeah, I am filling in with a little bit of a wash. And now I've got that thicker brush, and I'm coming back in and I'm doing my thicker kind of curves at the bottom, at the base of these flames that I love to make, and resolving those so that they feel more complete. Yeah, I used to sit at the easel for hours and hours and hours and make these big oil paintings, and now I gotta say, I just like to play and allow things to be just more simple, like a symbol can speak a whole lot because the universe is speaking in color and symbols, right? And so sometimes just that essence distilled in a set of symbols working together can do what I desire for my artwork, and that can be enough. It can be really fun or really intense. So I had like a spot somewhere on there that I didn't like, but I decided to just make a bunch of drips on there, little splatters, so that it felt more cosmic. And now I'm just kind of going in and giving it a little bit more detail here and there to finalize the piece. So some finishing touches, and then up next is revisiting the completely dry background that I had done earlier with India ink, and now I'm referencing this sketch here, just the crown part. I have a charcoal white pencil, and I'm going to go ahead and sketch. I'm doing a little bit of measurement with my fingers to get a proportion that feels good for the size of the page. And also because I have the edges that are kind of lighter, I'm keeping my imagery within the dark background and letting the textural outside to kind of frame the piece. So yeah, just referencing the sketch and drawing it out. And, for the most part, this charcoal pencil will come off, right? If you if you wipe it down with like a cloth, a water cloth. So I'm doing some measurements. I'm like totally off. So I'm doing some more measurements with my hands, noticing, oh, I got to redo this so that it's more or less symmetrical. As you can see, I tend to be attracted to more symmetrical compositions, although sometimes I'll do some asymmetry. So now I have some like light yellow ochre. It's also a golden fluid acrylic, and I'm just kind of setting down some washes, some opacity with this. And I've decided that I'm going to play with a little bit of leaving some negative space to work as a shadow, which I probably paint over later. I think I do. But you can see with the fluid acrylic by Golden that you have the option, especially with a watercolor paper like we have here, to get some nice range of value just within, one color, just depending on how much water you use. And of course, you can get some nice texture coming through with a cold press watercolor paper. And this is a really thick watercolor paper, so it doesn't really buckle. I'm not a fan of the buckling watercolor paper, so I like the real thick ones. Yeah, and so I'm just kind of playing here. I just playing with the material and the water and just being real loosey-goosey with it. And you can see where I made that mistake with the measuring, and I'm just going to kind of leave that there. And then once it's dry later, I'll take a wet cloth and just take away that line that is not part of the drawing that I'm painting in. So I've got all that space on the bottom, and so I'm thinking, maybe I will add something else. And like I said before, you can have this all pre-sketched out. I'm inviting my symbols to speak to me. So I'm allowing the positive and the negative shapes to speak to me. I'm beginning to weave a story, and I've decided that a little lotus sort of at the base of the crown of flames is what is going to go there. And this is all kind of more, that traditional like Hindu flame style. And, the lotus flower is often seen as, where the goddesses are sitting or they're holding lotuses. And so just kind of keeping it more classic. And this time I'm starting off just adding the water to the shape and then going in with the fluid acrylic, which I think in hindsight would have been nice to do for the whole thing at the beginning. But, you live and you learn. You figure things out as you go. Now I've got my trusty liner brush, which I love and adore, and I am cleaning up those lines. And, I'm just getting started. I'm just, letting it speak to me, see what it wants to do, and really utilizing this light yellow ochre as sort of a base so that I can like scumble up that black. Because if, I just painted the color straight on the black, then it would not be as vibrant. But if I lighten it up with a warm tone, then it's going to feel more like fire. It's going to feel more alive. So now I have India ink and the liner brush. Once again, you could use like a Posca paint pen here. You can see it wasn't totally dry, and I've got some stuff kind of blending into areas that they're not supposed to, but it's a painting. You can always go over it. That's why I love paint. Of course, you can become a great master of painting and do everything right the first time, or you can just allow it to mess up sometimes and then go in and fix it later when it's dry. So I'm just kind of giving some shadows here. Oh, now I brought out the Karandash, which is one of my favorite materials. It's a water soluble crayon. And I am adding some like fleshy sort of pinky peach and just kind of rustling it in there. Karandash looks great as just like a crayon. And it also looks nice if you take a brush with some clean water and wash over it, and then it gets more of like a watercolor. And so I am fancying up some of these flames with this peachy color and playing with the texture. And I have a green, because yellow and black make a green anyway. So I just thought I'd heighten that up a little bit. All right, so now I have some of the gold that I used in the last two pieces, and I am going to just sparkle up these flames with some nice thick lines around the edges. A little bit hard to see here. Whenever we're working with metallics, they're hard to photograph and things, but you get the idea. Now I'm going to give that root symbol that I use a lot underneath the lotus to represent, emerging out of the muck. And got some more gold to bring some highlights. Now I have a sort of vintage white. I'm going to bring in some whites, and I'm pretty sure I can start kind of skipping over chunks of the painting just so I don't keep y'all too long. But you can see I've given the piece a lot of white highlights, and I've got my liner brush, and I am now deciding that we need something over here to balance out that big white drip that maybe is a little larger than I had wanted. And so I have a little snake kind of popping out of the muck, coming, hanging out, saying hi to this star shape over here. And bringing in that white just to balance out. Now I've got my Posca paint pens out. I love a Posca paint pen. Because like the Caran d'Ache, you can just leave it more graphic, or you can take a wet brush and have it blend out. I just recommend that you use your Posca paint pens on a dry surface. It's going to kind of mess up the marker if you're going to paint on top of wet paint. So I'm doing a little bit of hatching with a light pink to just give some texture, variety in the image. And just kind of break up some of the areas. And I decide that star is a little weird and boring and awkward, and I decide that it's going to now be like an ornament hanging from whatever that is, and just kind of giving it a little playful energy with some extra lines throughout. Color in a little pomegranate symbol over here. And then I decide that we need a little bit more of that over there to balance it out. So I like to bop around, my eye likes to bop around and see, where do we need, value, shape, color to balance out the composition so that it feels complete when you look at it, right? Because when you have a balanced composition, then the viewer can come in and explore and not feel confused or disoriented, right? Because you've given them the opportunity to just explore. So I put some Caran d'Ache around the star, and I decide it's a little too intense, so I just water it down with a wet brush, blot it with a paper towel, and that feels better to me. So, yeah. And then the last piece, I just felt like there was too much white in that corner. There's a lot of white border. So I'm taking that pink Caran d'Ache and I'm just giving it a nice bit of color in the upper left-hand corner. And then I'll take a brush with some water and just allow it to blend. And that is this Shakti fire piece, referencing some more traditional Hindu flames and playing with several different symbols working together to tell a story. So thank you so much for joining me. It has been a pleasure to guide you on this little journey with sacred fire. Be well.